Hey there, art nerds. Happy holidays. So I have another Paperchild tutorial for you guys. Today I'm going to show you how to take our elves on the shelves, our shelf sitter elves that we colored earlier today, and assemble them into these super cute little shelf sitting elves. And boy, that is a tongue twister. So today you have a twofer. You get Kara and you get Tanner, inspired by the very creepy elf on the shelf. So you can see that these use a little bit of weight as well as a popsicle stick to keep them upright, and they're perfect for placing on presents, on windowsills, on shelves, or on your mantle. The hardest part about this tutorial is cutting it out. So here are some selected highlights from the coloring video that I shared with you guys earlier today. You guys can find a link to that down in the description below. You can also find a link to where you can print out the line art for this, as well as, if you want to, you can print out the full colored version so you can just focus on cutting out your little cuties and assembling them. It's up to you. So we're beginning our tutorial with the colored version of this, as well as some implements for cutting and for sticking. So you're going to need a pair of scissors. You may want to have an X-Acto Blade or a paper cutter as well. You're also going to want some form of adhesion. I have double stick tape, a tape runner, and single-sided tape. And I'm also going to be using tongue depressors or popsicle sticks for this. They are a great way to give some stability and some rigidity to your paper kids. So you can find most of these supplies down at Dollar Tree. They're very inexpensive, and I'll make sure to list them out and link them in the description below. So I can't cut a straight line to save my life, and you're going to want to save as many long straight pieces of paper from this as possible, because we're going to use that to build the base. So I'm using a paper cutter to cut off the edges that I'm not going to need. I'm going to set those aside because I will probably be using them later, and if I don't use them today, I may use them in another Paperchild tutorial. Next, I'm going to move those out of the way, and I'm going to separate Kara from Tanner. Now, if you're not familiar with these kiddos, these are the Lilliputian kids from my webcomic, 7-inch Kara. You guys can read that for free at 7inchkara.com. I'll have a link down in the description below. So next, I'm cutting off big chunks of all the excess paper that I'm not going to need. This is going to make cutting out our little paper children a lot easier later on. Now, I'm not trying to fussy cut them just yet. That's where you cut along the line art. I need a certain amount of paper to be able to go in there with an X-Acto Blade and safely remove kind of the islands of paper. But I did remove most of the excess that I'm not going to need anymore. So I pulled out an old sketchbook. I'm going to use the chipboard as my cutting surface. You can of course use a cutting mat. The only thing is you want to make sure you don't cut directly on your table surface. And if you're a younger viewer, I highly recommend you get someone older who's more experienced with scissors and knives to do the cutting for you. You focus on the coloring and maybe even the assembly later on, and let them handle the cutting. So I'm using a small, it's not exact, it's Cricut brand, but I'm using a small knife to do kind of all my fussing cutting, to cut all of the areas that require some finesse, all of the smaller areas that I can't get into with my scissors. You guys might want to use a pair of very sharp pointed scissors to kind of cut out all of the little bitty areas. I don't own a pair of scissors like that yet. I'm going to change that tonight, hopefully. But they would be immensely helpful unless you're skilled with an X-Acto Blade like I am not and prefer to cut using an X-Acto Blade. So once I've done all my finer cutting using a small knife, I'm going to go in with scissors and fussy cut, i.e. cut along the line art. Now, if you're not super comfortable with scissors, if you're not familiar with them yet, or if you're not really good with scissors, it's okay to do what's known as a halo cut, where you leave a little white rim around the illustration. That's going to add some additional stability, and it's what I did with the paper children that I made back in June and July, and I promise it's not actually that noticeable. It's really all about what you're comfortable with and what you feel confident doing. I also want to point out that this video has been sped up several times. Some portions have been sped up more than others. I do not cut this fast, and I don't expect you to cut this fast, so it's okay to put on some holiday music, enjoy a cup of hot cocoa, and take your time cutting these out. So now that Kara's cut out, I'm going to do the same for Tanner. And if you guys don't know what Lilliputians are, they are the tiny people 7 inches tall who inhabit the spaces of our world. And I love spending my time researching, writing, and drawing stories about Lilliputians. You can read 7-Inch Kara as a webcomic for free, but if you're like me and you like physical books, you can order a copy of Volume 1 from the Natto Shop. I'll put a link down in the description below. And you can pre-order a copy of Volume 2, and I'll send that out to you guys as soon as they come in. We just finished working with the printer, and they should be in the mail, so hopefully I'll have some soon. If you want to learn more about Lilliputians in general, I have a 4-volume series that is also now in print, Lilliputian Living, and it's a charming collection of black and white illustrations and prose descriptions that really dive deep into the Lilliputian world. So I'm going to put a link down in the description to that as well. That was a lot of fussy cutting. It took me a while, but it's so worth it. And keep in mind, we get 2 Lilliputians for the price of none today, since this is a free tutorial with free printables. Make sure you check the description below. So we now need to build the base for these to sit on. We need to keep in mind that these need to balance basically on their own. And that is where our scrap paper is going to come in. We're going to use the same principle for both, so it's actually pretty easy. And this is one of the easier Paperchild tutorials I have coming up this December. So I want to use a popsicle stick along their backs to add some stability and some rigidity. So these were painted on 180-pound, very thick watercolor paper. The thicker paper you paint on, the more rigidity these are going to have. You may even want to, before you cut them out at all, you may want to glue them to like a cereal box. Cereal box cardboard would add plenty of rigidity, and then cut that out. But I'm going to use popsicle sticks for this instead, and I'm putting some double stick tape on my popsicle stick. You could use glue, but I don't want to use glue because glue adds moisture, and moisture causes paper to ripple. The double stick tape gives us an immediate effect. We don't have to wait for it to dry at all. And it does a really good job of holding the paper to paper, and it seems to be doing a good job of holding the popsicle sticks to the paper as well. I picked up these popsicle sticks down at Dollar Tree. You get like 100 of them for $1, and they've got all sorts of really cute craft supplies for the holiday season. So if you're short on craft supplies and you're heading out anyway, you may want to take a trip down to Dollar Tree. I promise I have no affiliation whatsoever with Dollar Tree. I'm just all about the affordable art supplies. So I've got this sheet of watercolor paper. I cut it in half using my paper trimmer. Now I am figuring out where I want to put the folds for this. So I want it to go basically all the way up her back to her neck. And this is long enough that I can make a triangular base with it. So out comes the double stick tape. I apply the double stick tape along the length that's going to go on her back. I push it down to make sure it gets good adhesion. And I apply some of the single-sided tape to kind of hold it down even better. I tend to over-engineer my little paper crafts and my paper children. The ones that I made in June are still holding up really strong. So if you take my advice and over-engineer it, these are going to be able to last all Christmas long and may even last into Christmases in the future. I'm going to just cut off, well, I tried to cut off the excess tape. My scissors did not want to cut it. You want to use sharp paper scissors when you're working on these. So I just folded the tape over instead. And then I'm folding up the base, so we're going to end up with a triangular base. And I'm basically going to replicate the exact same thing for Tanner. So for the next part of this tutorial, you're going to need a little bit of coinage. I'm using quarters for this. Nickels would work, pennies would work, or you can use paper clips or even small pebbles. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a counterweight that's going to allow these to balance on whatever you set them on. So I decided to tape my quarters together. I'm using 2 quarters per Paperchild, so it'll cost you $1 to make this, plus whatever supplies you need to pick up that you don't already have. And I'm just wrapping some single-sided tape around my quarters so they're a neat and tidy little package. I'm then going to use some double stick tape to tape my little quarter package into the base of the Paperchild's base. I'm repeating myself here. You guys will see what I mean in just a second though. So you don't want to put it too far back, but you want to put it about 1 inch away from where that fold is. And then you can fold over your excess paper and make a little support triangle so your Paperchild just doesn't flop over. A little bit of single-sided tape will do the trick. And I think Tanner is about ready for display. So let's do the same for Kara. So we have 2 absolutely adorable paper children assembled. We've got Tanner on the left and Kara on the right. Both of them have presents. We're just about ready to display them. I told you guys the hardest part about these 2 would be cutting them out. I wasn't wrong, was I? This one's a pretty simple and fun one. So if you decide to make this activity, create this activity, I would love it if you would show me what you made and tag me at Nattosoup, N-A-T-T-O-S-O-U-P, on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. So here comes the really important part. Now it's time to find a place to display them, and I had to figure out the optimal place for this. I think the windowsill will do just fine, and I asked Joseph to find a perfect place to pose little Tanner, and he decided he wanted to pose Tanner on one of the presents, and that made me think, gee, I should make some paper children that actually will pose with the present. So he's trying to balance them just so on top of a bag, but it would work just as well, if not even better, on top of a box. Alright guys, so today we assembled 2 super cute paper children. I hope you guys had fun. I sure had a lot of fun cutting, coloring, and assembling these paper children with you. Happy holidays, guys. Bye!